Welcome back to the channel, guys, and you join me here at Response Motors in the San Francisco Bay Area. By the way, if you haven't done so already, check out our website, responsemotors.com. We got tons of cool performance cars for sale. We also do full service here, so if you're looking to buy or sell a performance car, actually nationally, check us out. We do ship anywhere. In fact, I've actually sold cars to Australia. So we are your home for cool performance cars. Again, responsemotors.com, located in the San Francisco Bay Area. But now let's talk about the Project DT3 here. Last time we finally finished seam sealing. Thank goodness. We're ready to start body work. So today we're going to start working on putting some filler here, getting this sanded down, and then we're going to start prepping the rest of the body for paint. So if you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications because you got a lot of good content coming up. We're starting off with the heavy sander. So this is a pneumatic sander. It's one of my favorite tools, actually. What I'm trying to do here is create a little bit of a crevice. So get rid of some of that structural adhesive, create that crevice so that I can actually fill it in with filler so you don't get a bump. Instead, you get a little bit of a dip that you can fill smooth out and make the whole surface smooth. So I'm taking off the heavy stuff here with the sander. Then we're gonna move over to the filler in just a minute. So we're done with the heavy sanding. Now I'm going in with about an 80 grit hand sand. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I just want to open up around that work area, get rid of some of that extra paint, get it all rough so that we're not going to be putting any Bondo or anything over paint. You don't want to do that. You really want to put it over metal, right? And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just smoothing it out, getting a feel for it by hand before we start putting on the Bondo. Up next, got to do wax and grease remover. So got a nice wax and grease remover here. Gonna put it on the surface, get everything cleaned up, and then we're gonna put some Bondo on it. So let's go. Ah, the smell of Bondo. If you've never worked with Bondo, it's a very unique smell on any body shop. You will smell this from the street. I personally love it because it reminds me of working with my dad when I was younger and working on cars. Now, the key thing here is to use a scale because it's really important that you get the right ratio of Bondo to hardener. And so you'll see it's actually on a scale, and what I'm doing is I'm mixing it up on a piece of cardboard, and you want this very specific consistency. And the reason why you want the hardener versus the base to be the specific ratio is because you don't want it to harden too quickly. You can see as I put it on, it's still very workable. It's almost like icing, right? You're kind of like icing a cake here. I'm pushing that Bondo into the crack and making sure you're getting all the air bubbles out of it. So I'm shoving it in there so you don't get any kind of bubbles, any cracks in your final product here. So put it on kind of a heavy coat, and then I'm gonna let it sit for just a few minutes while it's still a little bit tacky, and then we're gonna sand it off. Been about 20 minutes, and what I did is I removed a little of the undercoat on the sides because I realized we don't want to sand in and have undercoat underneath the Bondo. So clean that out, give this a little bit of time. It's just starting to harden, so we're going to go ahead and start cutting it down with 80 grit paper. So let's go. One of the things you note when you're sanding is you don't want to gouge the paint. So even though it's 80 grit, you want to kind of move the sander up and down as well as left and right so that you don't run these big grooves into the paint, because then you've got to go ahead and fill that and get rid of it. So even though I'm doing heavy cutting here, it's always a good idea to move the block around, so you're not always sanding in one direction. If you can, you want to sand in kind of a 90 degrees all the time. It's a little hard to do, but in an ideal situation, you want to do something like that. But here I am just kind of cutting all the heavy stuff off, feeling with your hand, and just rinse and repeat, right? Just keep doing it until you can't feel anything left. So the first coat went on, and you can see there's some pretty low spots, which is what I wanted, so that we could kind of fill it. But I'm still feeling some discontinuities here, especially right here. So I'm gonna put a little bit more on a couple of these areas, but this is looking pretty good. So now that I kind of got this somewhat flat, we'll put the next coat on, sand it, and then we should be good after that to go to the glaze. So yeah, the best thing to do is just feel it and shut your eyes, and if you can feel a bump or any kind of change in the surface, you know you're going to see it. And you can see a couple of the deeper sanding marks here from the pneumatic sander. So one more coat, and then we're going to sand it and be done. So as I'm sanding here, you're gonna have to watch out because there's a body line. You can kind of see it, and actually now what I'm doing is I'm taping it off. And the reason I'm doing that is that you're sanding down one edge of the line at a time, and then you peel the tape off and you sand the other edge, and this allows you to keep that body line intact. It's really, really important so that you don't sand off the body line and you lose kind of that shape to the car. It starts getting really soft. And so even though this isn't a really important area, it's really important that you do that anytime you have a body line. So after I finish sanding the Bondo, now I'm actually putting on a glaze. You can see the consistency is quite a bit different. It's a lot lighter, way easier to work with. It's much more fluid. You can actually push it around a bit. So it's a lot just nicer. So again, you want to fill in, you want to put on that first coat and really push it in, make sure there's no air bubbles, and then sand it off, and it just provides such a nice finish. So I'm using the higher grit sandpaper here, sanding down that glaze, and you can see I'm kind of moving the block in different directions so that I don't constantly sand down and get those deep grooves. So because I have that body line and this is a lighter sandpaper now, I'm really just kissing the surface to get that glaze nice and smooth. I'm not gonna bother taping this time to keep that body line because I kind of did that for the heavier stuff. Now I'm just trying to get rid of any of the extra glaze and get that smooth to go off to the body shop. Now that we finished some of the body work, and this again, I'm gonna leave to finish off at the body shop because these guys are a lot better at this than I am. But what I have to do now is remove some of the rest of this adhesive around the windshield, get rid of some of the adhesive where the side skirts were, pull off any of the stickers, emblems, and start sanding this thing. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get rid of the rest of the adhesive around the windshield. Now it's interesting because Porsche actually tapes this off in the factory so that you're only putting the adhesive on the primer, which is interesting. So I saw that on all of the areas where they put the windshield adhesive or any kind of glue. For reference, they do not do this at Ferrari. We looked, and that is not the case on the 458 we have here. So I'm going to remove the rest of this and then make sure that when it comes time to put it back on, we're gonna put it on primer only. So let's get to it. So first thing I'm gonna use is the oscillator. So this guy is great for cutting off some of the adhesive, but before you do that, you gotta make sure use a little lubricant. So I got some car wash soap, a brush, and I'm just gonna go make sure all this stuff has lubricant on it. So it's really important to use lubricant here because if you don't, your tool's going to get super hot and then it starts to dull out really fast. So what I'm doing is I'm using the oscillating tool to get some of the heavy adhesive off. And if you've never tried removing adhesive after you've pulled a windshield or any kind of structural part, it's a royal pain. This stuff is extremely hard. It does not want to come off. I mean, it's designed not to come off. And I'm just continuing to use the oscillating tool to get off all the adhesive around the windshield, around where the roof was mounted. And then you're going to see me go back to the rear glass and remove that too. So the important thing here is I have to get all of the adhesive off, everything, down to bare metal because I'm going to be painting the car. And the only real way to get this stuff off, because I've tried everything, is mechanically. So what I mean by that is cutting it, abrading it, anything you can imagine, peeling it to get this stuff off. And it's just awful. It takes just a lot of patience and brute force. So here you're going to see me start to protect some of the body because I'm going to use my Dynabrade wire wheel. And I've already kind of cut off a lot of the heavy stuff, and now I'm going to get into all the cracks and get all that last residual adhesive and urethane off. Again, this is because I'm painting the car. So I am going to prime these areas before we do paint because you've got bare metal now, but you've got to get all that adhesive off, and this just takes forever. So this whole adhesive removal took a solid day of just manual labor to get it off, which you're going to see in the video. So I finally gave up trying to get the oscillating tool around some of these parts, and I found that just a manual razor blade worked pretty well. You could get this all the way down to the paint without gouging the paint if you're careful. And so I just decided, okay, I'm gonna just carefully remove all the adhesive and get all of that off from the rest of the cracks and crevices and just peel piece by piece away as I go around the car. So you're gonna see me do this now for a few more minutes. But it ended up being not too bad. My fingers hurt a bunch, but it worked out really well. So advice, if you're going to be removing adhesive, use a razor blade. It worked really well. In the end, I mean, the oscillating tool worked well too, but the razor blade really, that was kind of the golden ticket here. And then the Dynabrade took the rest off to get everything down to paint. So you might be asking why I've bothered to tape off parts of the car if we're going to repaint it anyway. Honestly, it's because if you've ever painted a car, anything that you do to damage the paint, you have to fix before you repaint it. So to save time and labor, try to protect the paint as much as I can. I could have left on the clear bra, I suppose, but that was not thinking ahead too much. So instead, I taped it off and try to be careful not to gouge up the paint more than necessary here. So I'm actually being pretty careful with the Dynabrade just to get off the adhesive, rough up the surface a little bit, and get it ready for primer. Took a long time. Tried a bunch of different things to get the adhesive off from the windshield. So I used my oscillating tool, which took some of the heavy stuff off, and then I was trying to get it off with just some manual methods, some chemical methods, and nothing was working. So what ultimately was the best thing to do is once I had taken the heavy stuff off with the oscillator, I used a razor blade and just manually trimmed back everything. So my fingers are really sore. But Then there was a little bit left, and the best thing to do was to use the Dynabrade. So I used the Dynabrade wheel, the wire wheel, and just took the rest of the adhesive off. Now, if you were just removing a windshield and putting on a new windshield, you wouldn't want to take this all the way down. You want to take it down to about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. But because I'm actually going to be painting the whole car, I have to take all the adhesive off. Now what I'm going to do is scuff this, prime it, and then we'll go ahead and clean the rest of the paint off and get ready for body paint, because this stuff I'll paint over, but then I'm going to have to re-scuff it when I go to put the adhesive on. So up next, let's go ahead and prime this stuff, and then we'll get going on the sanding. So before we got to do any more progress on the car, the body shop called and said, hey, we can get it in. So we quickly got it onto the cart, strapped it down, moved everything out of the way, cleaned up some last little details. I pulled off some last little parts and grommets, gaskets, and whatnot, and we wheeled it out into the light of day, which it hadn't seen in quite some time. So it was a pretty exciting moment to see it get out of the shop. First time it's seen the light of day in, since July, maybe June. So off to the body shop. This is about as prepared as I could get it. Now it's time to let the professionals go do their job. Hopefully next time I see it back here, it will be all painted and ready to go. So we're gonna load her up, get it over there, and then I'll show you their facility. And we've arrived about 30 seconds later. So we're here at United Collision. They're going to be doing all the work. It's new home. Sad to see it go, but we'll see it again soon. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit. I'll actually show you pulling off the doors and the fenders from the other car, but here is the body at the body shop. And I apologize for the lighting. They had a lot of lights in here, and it was hard to film, and it was really loud because they had compressors going. But you can see they've actually done a little bit of work already. They've gone ahead and finished off and primed those front areas. They look really, really good. The gaps on the doors from the donor car, actually not bad. I was really surprised. We just threw the fenders and the hood on, so you can see it's coming along. Now this car is actually sitting on a alignment bench called a Caro liner, which is a super, super nice piece of equipment. It's got a big ferro arm on it, and it has a program that lets you measure everything on the car, which I'm really, really excited about. So we're going to measure all the hard points, and Porsche actually has a spec that's about 3 millimeters for every hard point. So we're going to be able to see how in spec or out of spec the car is, make any tweaks we need to make. But as you can see from the gaps on the door, it's already pretty good. This is the back area I found right before we left. There was some damage there. They've already gone ahead and fixed it. They've started scuffing some of the paint here. So I'm pretty excited. It's been moving along. It's been a little bit because of the holidays, but as you can see, we're making good progress. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this week's video. It's been a while since I posted. I apologize. Been traveling for a holiday, then traveling for work, then traveling again for vacation, plus COVID. So it's been a little while. I appreciate the patience, but a lot was done on the car. As you saw, we got to the body shop finally. Next week, we're actually going to start doing those measurements, get a whole suite of measurements on the car, see where we are, tweak anything if we have to, then it's immediately going to paint. I've been told it's going to be done in about a week or so at the body shop. Fingers crossed, we're getting ready here to start assembly again. So if you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications because we got more good content coming right up.